Hello, and welcome to History Unboring. Today, we'll be covering the interesting topic of top 5 most underrated historical figures. Now, who should we start with? How about you, James K. Polk? Polk was born in North Carolina, but as a young boy, moved to Tennessee. While in Tennessee, Polk made friends with this one guy you've probably never heard of. His name was Andrew Jackson. Jackson was already a famous war hero at the time, but he had bigger plans. Jackson wanted to be the president. And lo and behold, he did it. He implemented some of his own wacky ideas about the Treasury, among other things. But the reason we're talking about him is because the guy he brought along for the ride, none other than James K. Polk. Polk followed Jackson every step of the way throughout his presidency and adopted many of his political ideologies. With this newfound knowledge, It was with this newfound knowledge that Polk became the governor of Tennessee. But then, with this newfound experience, Polk became the President of the United States. He reinstated many of Jackson's old policies, but one of the other things that he believed in was manifest destiny. You see, back in Polk's day, the United States didn't look like this. It looked more like this. As many, like Polk, believed that the United States was destined by God to multiply like rabbits, spread out, and conquer the entire rest of the North American continent. As president, Polk promised to fulfill these promises by annexing the then country of Texas, yes, it was a country back then, and gaining all of this territory. Also, you ever played Oregon Trail? Well, the reason so many people went to Oregon was because the government believed if the amount of United States settlers outnumbered anyone else living in the area, they could gain all of Oregon territory, which would be all of this. Let's see how Polk does. Okay. Nice. Wait. That's part of Mexico. How did he conquer all of... Oh my gosh! Yeah, it's safe to say Polk went above and beyond expectations here. But how did he do it? Well, the United States wasn't the only country with funky borders back in Polk's day. Mexico also looked a lot different. They owned what is most of now the southwestern United States. Their border would have gone here. But Mexico also used to own Texas. But as previously established, Texas was its own country now. So, and once Texas gained its independence, they had to decide on where the border should go. Texas claimed the border should go along the Rio Grande River and that it would look like this. But Mexico claimed that the border actually looked more like this, meaning there was some disputed territory in the middle. Well, when Polk became president and annexed Texas, he decided he'd agree with Texas's claim and that the border would go along the Rio Grande River. He also made the extremely provocative decision of sending American troops into the disputed territory. And definitely not because he wanted Mexico to retaliate, giving them an excuse to start a major war and conquer everything. Oh no! Mexico retaliated, giving him an excuse to start a major war and conquer everything. And major war they did. This was the start of the Mexican-American War. However, the United States was, and still is, a pretty big nation. and Mexico really didn't stand a chance. This was pretty amazing, considering Polk did all of it in the span of just 4 years. I'm sure he will look back on this for the entire rest of his life and just think about how amazing this was. Oh, he died 3 months after he left office. Well then, let's talk about this next guy, Stede Bonnet. Bonnet was a rich plantation owner from Barbados during the 1700s. You could say that he was quite the gentleman. Even though he owned 94 African slaves, everything is going pretty good for Bonnet. As long as he doesn't do anything really weird or stupid. He's had a midlife crisis and now he wants to be a pirate. Much better. Due to the fact that he had gained a lot of wealth during his days as a plantation owner, Bonnet was able to buy his own ship rather than take over one. He was also able to give his crew proper salaries instead of just splitting up captured loot evenly. Bonnet saw relatively good success on his early days in the high seas. But once he ran into a Spanish man of war, things went south. But he was forced to retreat to the pirate haven of Havana, where he met none other than Blackbeard. No, I'm not making this up. The inexperienced Stede Bonnet came face to face with the absolute legend of a pirate that was Blackbeard. And it's not like they may have brushed paths. No. But they actually teamed up. This is when Blackbeard learned of Bonnet's inexperience as a pirate. And they made a bit of a deal. Okay, Bonnet, I've got an idea. So how about I do the piratey things and such, and, be a captain, and you can still be the captain of the ship, even I do the captain things, because you'll be my apprentice, and you'll hang out in the captain's lounge. And that went pretty well for a while, until Blackbeard went, whoa, hold on, that looks like a way better flagship. See ya, Bonnet. And Bonnet was left on his own, where he once again got his butt kicked. This is also the point where his crew is starting to get slightly resentful of him. They saw how good a good captain can be under Blackbeard's captaining. And now, they didn't exactly like Bonnet that much. Thankfully for his crew, Bonnet somehow ran into Blackbeard again. And the exact same thing happened. Except this time, while all that was going on, the King of England, George I, was getting kind of upset about all of the pirating that was going on. So he issued a decree that said any pirate who handed themselves in before a certain deadline would be granted a pardon for all of their malicious crimes. Bonnet went to go get one of these pardons. However, he made the mistake of leaving Blackbeard, all of his captured loot, and his resentful crew members alone in one spot. And that didn't go too well. When Bonnet returned, he was left with only a portion of his crew and none of his loot, and Blackbeard was nowhere to be seen. After this experience, Bonnet turned into a seemingly completely different pirate captain. He was very mad at his crew and would sometimes even threaten to kill them. That is, until he was hanged by the British later. Well, that turned dark pretty fast. Let's talk about them, the Trung sisters. The Trung sisters I kind of cheated on. Technically, they're two historical figures, but for the purposes of this video, they'll count as one. The Trung sisters consisted of Trung Trek and that one, and Trung Ni, this one. The Trung sisters lived during the time when the Han Chinese Empire had recently acquired territory in Vietnam, where the Trung sisters lived. Now, the thing you need to understand about Chinese culture is that in China, women have very different roles than men do, like many other cultures. Except the thing you gotta understand about Vietnamese culture is that women are seen as largely the same as men, unlike many other cultures. And so when China tried to assimilate the Vietnamese into their culture, the Trung sisters, like many others, weren't very big fans. That's why Trung Trek, her husband, and many of the local village leaders organized a revolt against Han China. However, China was watching, and they made sure the plotters were executed. However, they didn't execute the women. So Trung Trek and many of the other wives of some of the plotters survived. Except this is the point where I want to clarify something. The way the Chinese treated their women differently than men is very different from sexism faced by women in the US. This was part of their culture, and it wasn't really bad at all. This probably explains why the Chinese didn't pay very much attention to the Trung sisters when they first started their rebellion. Because in China, leading rebellions isn't something that normal women do very often, which also explains why the Chinese were very defeated, decimated in Vietnam. Once word got back, the Trung sisters led Vietnam for 2 years before China, arguably very mad at the Vietnamese, told one of their best generals to go to Vietnam and decimate the Trung sisters. And decimate he did. However, that's not to say that the Trung sisters' legacy can't still be felt today throughout Vietnam. Many people still celebrate them